Hello, everyone. This is Ben Dunn, founder of Antarctic Press, a comic book publishing company founded in 1985, still publishing comics even today. I'm also the creator of such comics as Mangaverse, Warrior Nun, Mighty Tiny, Tomorrow Girl, and Ninja High School, among a host of other creations. So, today I'm going to talk about why most comic book companies fail within the first 5 years of their creation. Now, of course, not all of them fail at that rate, but an astonishing number of them do. Now, I am going to distinguish between what is a comic book company and what is a comic book publisher. Now, a publisher is essentially anybody who creates a comic book, prints it, distributes it, and that's that. Anybody can be a comic book publisher. And that's as long as you create comics, print them, distribute them, you are essentially a comic book publisher. Now, a comic book company is a company that's been established specifically to publish, print, and distribute comic books. Now, for the most part, comic book companies are established by someone who wants to do that, has a federal tax state ID number, is set up to pay taxes, is set up with legitimate account information, has a DBA, usually is incorporated, and thus that is what distinguishes a comic book company from simply being a comic book publisher. Now, a lot of times people get the two confused. Just because you publish comic books doesn't make you a comic book company. Now, you can say that you are, but unless you meet those criteria, usually you're just somebody who is creating comics, just printing them and distributing them. You're not really, unless you're doing business as, then most likely you're just an individual printing comics, publishing comics. Now, I mean, you could argue semantics with me all day long, but that's really what it boils down to. So let's get down to the bare bones essentials, okay? So Antarctic Press was established in 1985, and I was a publisher. I wasn't a company, But my friend who helped me start the company realized we needed to do everything legitimately. He was a businessman. He had his own business. He had a construction business. So he helped me set up a DBA, set up a bank account under that DBA, and we started to do business under that DBA. You have to report income to the state, federal level. You have to pay taxes on what you make. You have to report that. If you incorporate, then you go ahead and pay yourself as an employee. And that's another thing about comic book companies is that usually they have employees. Employees with some payroll. And that you are there hired to perform specific tasks. So that's why Marvel and DC are considered companies and not just publishers. It's because they have all of those criteria that distinguish them from just somebody who just wants to put out some comics. So why do most of them fail? In the last 40 plus, of almost 40 years that Antarctic Press has been in business, why has Antarctic Press survived while so many other companies have failed? This is a question I've also wondered myself because it's really something I've been wanting to look into and to see why that's so. By all stretch, by the imagination, by all metrics, Antarctic Press should not be here today. It has everything going against it. It's small. It's not very well known outside its core audience. it has uh, gone through many economic changes over the last almost 40 years of its existence. Now, I have experienced a lot over the last decades or so. Yeah, I'm talking decades. We're talking years. Years. To quote my bro Larry Higgins. The thing is that I've seen a lot of companies rise, especially during the 80s and 90s, trying to follow some sort of trend, trying to take advantage of the market while it's hot, and try to see if they can make success out of it. Now, the thing about comic books is that the level of entry is very low. Anybody can start a company, especially a comic book company. The problem is that, like any company, you have to have a product to sell, and that's where the number one failing of most of these companies are. They start off with the intent, and usually are very well funded initially. They have investors, they have huge amounts of starting capital, and they go in head on thinking that they can make vast amounts of money in a market, that they may have not done a lot of research on, So that's the number one thing is capital. Okay, if your company, the comic book company, doesn't have enough capital to write out any downfall or low sales expectations, then it's eventually going to run out of that money. You cannot spend more money than you make. It's a simple equation, simple business fact. Just like losing weight, you have to eat less and burn more in order to lose weight. And that's the thing is that a lot of comic book companies start off with not enough capital to operate. You need to usually have, the general rule is that you need to have enough capital to operate like 2 to 3 years without interruption in order to maintain a business, in order to start building a clientele, and start to get people to know who you are. So that's the number one thing is not enough capital to start off with. Number two is the product. What is the product you're trying to sell? If you're trying to compete with Marvel and DC, you're going to fail. It's just simple as that. Now, the only exception has been Image, but even Image Comics had to pivot and change because they knew that initially sales were fantastic, but they blew it. They didn't have a vision. They were all separate studios and not working together as a team. That's the one thing Marvel and DC does well. Have editorial teams that have a cohesive vision and they have a specific goal. All Image did was announce releases of a whole bunch of comics, and instead of focusing on one or two and concentrating on those and getting them out on time to build an audience, they were all willy-nilly releasing as many products as they possibly could in order to maintain their high level of sales. The only exception being, of course, Todd McFarlane's Spawn, and Savage Dragon by Eric Larson. They were committed to their series and they did not go hog wild on spin-offs and just concentrated, on their core title in order to build up an audience for that core title. And then afterwards, you can spin off other titles and see if you can build up your quote-unquote universe. So what is your core title? Is it enough to maintain the viability of your company? Can you sell enough of that particular product in order to maintain business? That's a big question, you should ask yourself before you dip your toes into the competitive and minefield known as the comic book industry. or the comic book. I know some people say it's not really an industry, but for lack of a better term, that's what I'm going to use in order to describe the environment that we're in, the business environment that we're in. So it is something you should definitely look is what is your product core line? Is it something that can be sustained over a long period of time? And can there be enough sales over that period of time to maintain the status quo of staying in business? Now, Antarctic Press, is a company that initially was focused on indie and manga related type comics. Now, the thing about independent comics is that we're not competing with Marvel and DC. We know we can't go head to head with them. That is a suicide pact. You cannot. You might as well jump into a kamikaze plane. Your odds are better. Against Marvel and DC. Now, realizing this, we had to create a product line that both I liked, that I wanted to be involved with, but did not compete with Marvel and DC. Now, we compete with them indirectly. We still compete with people who buy comics. Now, most of the people who buy our products, probably buy Marvel and DC as well, but they also like to support independent comics, or we cover subject matter that they're not covering. So that was our main focus, was to create products that no one else is creating, that a genre or niche that is not being fulfilled. Manga was not well known back in the early 80s, and so we had a core audience that wasn't being served, and we decided that was the audience we were going. Now, it may be small, maybe niche, but they were reliable, and they were loyal, and they were ready to spend money on something that wasn't available widely at the time. So we took advantage of that. We always take advantage of sales trends that no one else seems to want to cater to. We like to do, comedy. We like to do comedy. We like to do furry. We like to do steampunk. We like to do, romance. We even did, LGBTQ stuff back in the day when it was not very popular or well known. We still did it. We had a series called Herc and Thor. We had a series Stins. We also had all sorts of other series back then that focused on that subject matter. And we never judged. We never said if we thought it could sell, we did it. That was the main focus of our line. So that's the thing, is that what is your product line? Who are you trying to cater to? If you don't know who you are, then how are you going to sell what you have? That's the important thing. So another problem that a lot of comic book companies have is sustainability and consistency. Now, what do I mean by that? Well, what I mean is that, does the comic book company maintain a constant presence on the newsstand? Can you produce product? Because, the thing about it is that just like any company, you have to produce product that people will buy, and you have to do it constantly and consistently. If you're not on the newsstands or outputting product, you're not generating income. When you're not generating income, you cannot sustain running your company, because every month the rent is due, utilities have to be paid, payroll has to be met, things like that. And if you're not producing product that comes out every month, every time, on a consistent and sustainable basis, then that is a recipe for eventual failure. And that's going to come back to haunt them. Another failing of comic book companies is they tend to spend too much on things that don't help the company. When when I saw these comic book companies rise with huge capital, then and they spent money on things that didn't directly. They did not directly reinvest back into their company, spending on frivolous things like new cars, lavish parties, vacations, things like that that they spent on themselves and not put back in the company, then eventually the money is going to run out if the sales are not sustainable. And so it can. That's another thing is eternal rot. Sometimes in a comic book company, the people who run it don't care about the actual comics. They only care about themselves, how much money they can make. They don't spend the money where it should go, to the creators, to the people who make the product. What if a company like, say, Ford or Keebler or any other company spent even like the entertainment companies like Disney and Paramount stuff, they spent all this money on the appearance of success rather than on the core product that they're producing. And if you don't spend money on the core product that you're producing, eventually people are going to realize that the quality is not there, the entertainment value is not there. There's no reason for them to continue to support a company that doesn't care about putting out a product on time and putting it with a level of quality that is to be expected. So that's another failing of a lot of comic book companies. And that is something that needs to be addressed if you want to have sustainability. And a lot of times they're just arrogant. Comic book publishers, when they have a modicum of success, feel like that success will continue forever. No, it doesn't. I hate to break it to you. Eventually, people get tired of it. They get bored of it. They move on to something else. And that's why Antarctic Press has a constant mix of product line every single time we can. We try to find new, innovative, interesting ideas in order to keep the product mix, new, interesting, and innovative. We try to find creators who have, new visions of things. We try to find creators who are hungry, who want to prove themselves, who want to show what they're capable of doing. And usually those are the ones who produce the best kind of material. I personally love when people submit stuff to me and it's something new and original, or has a unique look to it, because I really feel like that's the one advantage indie comics has over a comic book company like Marvel and DC, which usually used to have a house style or had creators that had unique look to them. But now I see them and I can't tell one artist from the other. They all look like they use the same program, to draw their comics. And it just seems very generic and, and not very attractive to me, at least. I may be different for other people. And if you like that, that's fine. Go support the stuff you like. I always say, support the stuff you like, ignore the stuff you don't, But I also feel that you need, as a consumer, to try new things, especially if the company is producing material that you have interest in. Like right now we're doing a war comic called World War III, by Motofumi, and there are few people putting out war comics these days, but it's been fairly successful for us. People seem to like it, and people who like war comics have their fix of a war comic, So what else is? Another thing is, what is your long-term plan? If you have a comic book company, where do you see yourselves 1, 5, 10 years down the line? Where do you see your company? Do you have a long-term plan? Do you have long-term goals? How are you going to go get those goals? The thing is, a lot of comic book publishers, they go from one project to the next, day to day, because usually a small publisher is everything. There's usually one person running it. He or she, they produce the material themselves. So, can you be sustained with one product? It's possible, but eventually, it will be hard to maintain that, especially if you're not making enough, or just barely making enough to support the next project. So what else is there? Well, another failing is fighting among yourselves. You know, when you have partners or you have people who are working for you, eventually you're going to run into problems like that will cause friction among either the founders or other creators. And if you rely on a creator to produce that product and you're having very bad relationships with that creator, then and you yourself are not a creator and cannot produce the product yourself, then you're going to run into some major problems. You know, because if you don't have workers to produce the product, then you don't have a product. When you don't have a product, you can't sell the product, and if you can't sell the product, you're eventually going to go out of business. I and Antarctic Press are very lucky because I can draw. I can write, I can produce, I can edit, I can do all that stuff, you know, and I can do it because whatever salary I make, you know, through Antarctic Press, it goes right back into the company. You know, I don't make a lot. That's true. I don't. But, you know, I do supplement my income with other sources of revenue. But that's beside the point, is that I'm able to create product for the company in order for it to maintain its continued existence. We also like to create loyalty within the company as well. Fred Perry is a good example. He's the creator of Gold Digger. He's been with the company since 1990. Technically since 1989, but really with us since 1992. And he's done work for the publishers. Yes, you know, we allow that to happen. No one at Antarctic Press is exclusive, you know, and because I think exclusivity is ridiculous, especially in the comic book company, comic book industry. You know, when you sign an exclusive, you know, I think that's you're limiting your options, you know, and if the exclusivity doesn't work out, then the company is unhappy and the creator is unhappy. You know, it sounds great on paper, you know, but it's a really stupid and ridiculous concept that should be abandoned immediately in the comic book industry. But, you know, who am I to say? I've only been in business nearly 40 years, so, you know, what possible advice could I give these comic book companies to maintain themselves, you know? And so that's another thing is that what does the company actually own? You know, if you're a comic book company and you own nothing, then you have nothing. Okay, the reason Marvel and DC are so successful is they own a lot of popular IPs. Now, how do they make those IPs popular? Well, they worked at it. They created stories, you know, with that resonated with readers. Yeah. When Fantastic Four first came out in 1961, you know, no one thought that this would work. You know, Stanley didn't know this was work. This was the last desperate thing he was going to do before he left comics altogether. He didn't really want to do comics, you know. But his wife says, "Yeah, Stan, why don't you just do whatever the hell you want and see what happens?" You know. And he says, so he created Fantastic Four, which turned out to be a huge success. You know, he didn't know whether or not it was going to be successful or not. You know, the publisher didn't know. You know, but you know they didn't. They took a chance and it paid off. You know, this the Marvel Universe was created. You know, people say that these popular IPs are popular. You know, not because they appeared out of whole cloth. It's because the people who created them worked very hard to make them popular. You know, to resonate with people, to give them something that they want. And that's really what it comes down to. Are you creating a product that people want? You know, that people will buy? You know, you have to ask yourself that fundamental question. If it's not, then you may be on the path of self-destruction and failure. You know, so and that's the thing about it is that comic book companies are in a very highly competitive market. Very highly competitive. What makes your product stand out and is unique is really up to you. And again, I go back to, well, what do you own? You know, the thing about it is that everything I create is owned by Antarctic Press. Everything. You know, down to that's the one thing. And Antarctic Press can exploit that to its full extent. They can do spin-offs without having to worry about losing ownership of that particular product. We can do work for hire, freelance work to do spin-offs, you know, and sequels and other things, and the company will still maintain ownership. You know, now creators who bring us their own creation, of course, they maintain ownership as well. We just basically lease the creation, for one-time publishing, usually one-time publishing, and it's up to them whether they want to stay working with us or not. Like I said, Fred Perry is one of the few exceptions. Joe White is another, who created Twilight X, and Tom Hutchinson has also been with us many, 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 many years. And while they create a lot of product for us, they choose to stay with Antarctic Press. They could take their product anywhere they want, any publisher they want. We will not stop them. If Gold Digger were to leave Antarctic Press, we would pat Fred on the back, wish him luck, and hope him a lot of success. But we still have all the products that Antarctic Press still owns: Ninja High School, Mighty Tiny, Tomorrow Girl, and a host of others. And I can create more characters. Some of them will hit, some of them won't. The beauty of it is that I can continue to create new characters. Like, for instance, I created a new sword and sorcery character called Kendra. And we're hoping that will prove to be a very big success for us. But we don't know until we actually produce it and release it. So I hope I've given you a little insight as to the why a lot of comic book companies eventually fail. There's very few companies that last more than 10 years. And the ones that do shows the tenacity and their product line that they have, that shows that it is possible to to have survivability in this industry. I don't say successful. I guess merely existing is successful enough, especially in this industry. The thing is the profitability. Are you growing? Are you making headway? Is your company becoming bigger? Not, I will tell you honestly, Antarctic Press has experienced some modest growth over the last 5 years. This is due in part to all the having a vision. We, when and focusing on our core line, creating new anthologies that are monthly, and so that there can be a predictable and sustained income flow. We know what the sales of those particular titles are being. They have been fairly consistent. But we supplement it with new creator-owned material to see what hits. Some hit very well. For instance, like Winnie the Pooh, Demon Hunter, Niobe, Critter, and many others. But others don't hit as well. But we at least took the chance that it would resonate with some readers out there. And we do support the creator, no matter how successful they are, no matter whether or not sales didn't quite meet expectations, and that's the key component. Now, one more thing before I leave before I leave as to why comic book companies usually fail is transparency. Transparency to us is very important. We try to be as honest and as transparent as possible. Whenever a creator has a problem, we try to address it right away. We are concerned about every single one of the creator and do not ignore them. We do not try to swindle them. We try to be as honest as possible with our numbers whatever we have control over. We don't have control over things like once they leave the printer, once they leave the warehouse and go into the hands of the distributor, into the consumer, into the comic book store. We have a little control over that. But we do have control up to the point of distribution. And that's another thing, is that if a comic book company is trying to hide something from a creator, won't communicate, won't talk to the creator, has an antagonistic attitude, insults the creator, calls them names, makes them feel unwelcome or unwanted or ignored, that's another recipe for disaster for a comic book company. Because eventually, we are a small community, word gets around, people start to talk, and then people stop working for them because they're not trustworthy. And that's the thing. If you don't have trust, then you don't really have anything. The thing about it is that trust is very, very, very hard to build and very easy to lose. And that's the one thing that we like to think that we have over other comic book companies. That if you work with us, if you have a problem, we'll try to address it, and try to address it as best we can. Now, of course, You as a creator have the final say in anything, concerning your own creation, and we will support it 100%. And whatever you decide, we will move on. You will move on. The world will move on. What happens between us and the creator, happens between us and the creator, and that's that. And hopefully we can resolve it, and hopefully we can part ways amicably. So, but anyway, those are my thoughts as to why comic book companies usually fail within the first 5-10 years, and take it for what it is. Hopefully, some of this advice will resonate. And you take it for what it is. It's just my opinion, my experience over the last almost 40 years, of running a comic book company. And if you like what you've heard, please like and subscribe. Put a thumbs up. Comment below. I do read them. Also have a campaign going called Crimson Nun. Check it out. It's a really cool Kickstarter campaign with the return of Crimson Nun from the Warrior Nun universe, which I created. And until next time, this has been Dunn signing off.